The question hit him harder than the winter wind that sliced through the quiet streets of Cedar Grove, Ohio. She asked it so lightly, almost playfully, as if it were nothing. But to him, it felt like someone had reached into his chest and twisted a memory he had buried for years. "Why don't you have a girlfriend?" Marcus Whitaker stood frozen in the elementary school parking lot, his 6-year-old daughter Sophie tugging at his coat while snowflakes gathered on his shoulders. Across from him stood Clare Donovan, her auburn hair tucked beneath a wool hat, her warm brown eyes filled with innocent curiosity. She had no idea what her simple question had done to him. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and love that grows quietly in the hardest seasons of life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. Marcus had become good at hiding things. He hid exhaustion behind a steady smile. He hid loneliness behind responsibility. And most of all, he hid the truth behind that single question. The truth was that he didn't have a girlfriend because every time he tried to imagine loving someone again, he saw Claire's face. And he couldn't admit that. Not to her. Not to himself. 3 years earlier, Marcus's world had cracked open on a hospital floor in Columbus. His wife Rachel had lost her long battle with an autoimmune illness that slowly stole her strength. Marcus had held her hand until the machines fell silent. He promised her he would be strong for Sophie. He promised he would keep living. But he never promised he would let himself love again. Life as a single dad in Ohio wasn't glamorous. Marcus worked as a mechanic at a small auto shop on Main Street. His hands were always stained with grease, his back aching by sunset. Every morning started before dawn. He packed Sophie's lunches with careful precision, braided her hair clumsily but proudly, and memorized the names of every stuffed animal that shared her bed. He became both anchor and sail in her little world. Clare entered their lives, quietly, like spring after a long winter. She was Sophie's first-grade teacher, newly transferred from Michigan. She had a way of kneeling down to a child's level and making them feel seen. Sophie adored her instantly. Marcus noticed the change in his daughter first. Sophie started talking more at dinner, laughing louder, drawing pictures of her classroom with bright yellow suns. Then he noticed Clare. It began with polite exchanges at pickup time. Then came longer conversations about Sophie's reading progress, her curiosity about science, her fear of thunderstorms. Clare listened when Marcus spoke, really listened. She remembered small details. She asked how his week was going. No one had asked him that in a long time, but Marcus built walls around his heart like a fortress. He told himself it was respect for Rachel. He told himself it was responsibility. He told himself he couldn't risk bringing someone new into Sophie's life, only to lose them too. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. Loving again meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant pain. So when Clare asked that question in the parking lot, she thought she was teasing. She had noticed the way other parents occasionally flirted with him at school events. She had seen how he always redirected the conversation, gently but firmly. To her, it seemed like a mystery. To him, it was survival. Marcus forced a laugh that sounded hollow even to his own ears. He muttered something about being too busy. Clare smiled, but her eyes lingered a second too long, as if she sensed there was more. Winter melted into early spring, and Cedar Grove began to thaw. The maple trees along the sidewalks grew buds, children played outside longer. And somehow, despite his resistance, Marcus found himself looking forward to seeing Clare each day. One afternoon, Sophie's asthma flared up during recess. Clare called Marcus immediately, her voice steady but concerned. He rushed from the garage without even clocking out. When he arrived, Sophie was sitting in the nurse's office, pale and shaky. Clare was beside her, holding her hand, whispering something gentle that made Sophie nod. Marcus felt something shift inside him at that moment. Clare wasn't just kind, she cared, deeply. After the inhaler worked and Sophie's breathing steadied, Marcus thanked Clare more times than he could count. Their eyes met in the quiet hallway, fluorescent lights humming overhead. There was a silence between them, heavy and unspoken. It would have been so easy to step closer, to say what his heart had been shouting for months. But he stepped back instead. That night, he sat at the kitchen table long after Sophie had fallen asleep. The house felt too quiet. He stared at an old photo of Rachel on the fridge. He whispered an apology to her memory, though he wasn't even sure for what. For wanting to move on? For feeling something new? Grief had twisted his understanding of loyalty. The turning point came unexpectedly at the school's spring fundraiser. Marcus volunteered to help set up booths. Claire was coordinating the event, clipboard in hand, hair pulled back loosely. They worked side by side, stringing lights across the courtyard. The air smelled like popcorn and fresh-cut grass. At some point, Sophie ran off with friends, leaving Marcus and Claire alone beneath the soft glow of the hanging bulbs. Claire's laughter drifted upward when the ladder wobbled and Marcus steadied it. For a brief second, everything felt effortless, and then she asked it again, but softer this time. "Why don't you have a girlfriend, Marcus?" There was no teasing in her voice now, only sincerity. His heart pounded so loudly he was sure she could hear it. He wanted to tell her that every time she smiled at Sophie, he imagined what their home might feel like with her in it. He wanted to tell her that her kindness scared him because it made him hope. He wanted to tell her that she was the reason he hadn't looked at anyone else. Instead, he told her about Rachel. The words spilled out slowly at first, then all at once. He spoke of hospital corridors, of promises made in whispers, of fear that love always ends in loss. Claire didn't interrupt. She didn't pity him. She simply listened. When he finished, the courtyard felt quieter than before. Claire looked at him with eyes full of something deeper than sympathy. Understanding. She told him that loving again didn't erase the past, it honored it. That Rachel's memory wasn't a chain holding him back, but a chapter that shaped who he had become. She reminded him that Sophie deserved to see her father happy, not just surviving. Marcus went home that night feeling raw but lighter. Days passed, then weeks. He began to notice the walls around his heart had small cracks. He allowed himself to text Claire about a funny story Sophie told. He accepted her invitation for coffee after school, telling himself it was just two adults talking. But it wasn't just that. It was laughter that felt natural. It was shared stories about childhood dreams and disappointments. It was realizing that Claire wasn't trying to replace anyone. She was simply offering presence. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Ohio skyline in shades of pink and gold, Marcus found himself standing once again in the school parking lot. Sophie had run ahead to join a friend's family for ice cream. Claire stood beside him, hands tucked into her coat pockets. This time, he didn't wait for her to ask the question. He told her the truth. He told her that he hadn't had a girlfriend because he was afraid, that he had been protecting his heart and Sophie's heart. But mostly, he had been protecting himself from admitting that he had already fallen for someone. Her breath caught slightly. He told her that she was the reason. There was no dramatic music, no grand gestures, just two people standing under a fading sky choosing courage over fear. Claire stepped closer. Not as a teacher, not as a stranger, but as someone willing to walk forward with him, not away. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us love is never truly lost. And before we end, I have a special request. Comment the word courage if you believe that opening your heart again is the bravest thing a person can do. Marcus didn't forget Rachel. He never would. But he learned that love is not a limited resource. It expands. It grows. It makes room. Months later, Sophie would draw a new picture for the fridge. In it, there were three figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Marcus, Sophie, and Claire. And for the first time in years, Marcus didn't feel like he was just surviving. He felt alive.